James Oglethorpe, founder and visionary. Introduction. James Edward Oglethorpe stands as one of the most compelling figures of the early 18th century British Atlantic world. Soldier, parliamentarian, reformer, and colonial founder, Oglethorpe's career reflected a passionate commitment to humanitarian ideals and social innovation. Best known as the principal founder of Georgia, the last of the 13 original American colonies, he envisioned a society that would offer a fresh start to England's worthy poor and serve as a bulwark against Spanish expansion. Oglethorpe's leadership, relationships, and vision were instrumental in shaping the early colony, while his work with the trustees for the establishment of the colony of Georgia in America reflected a broad experiment in philanthropic colonialism. Oglethorpe's biography and motivations. A. Early life and military career. James Oglethorpe was born in 1696 into a well-connected English gentry family, the youngest son of Sir Theophilus Oglethorpe and Lady Eleanor Oglethorpe. Growing up in Surrey, he received an elite education at Eton College and later attended Corpus Christi College, Oxford. The Oglethorpe family had a history of royal service, and James's upbringing was marked by privilege, responsibility, and an early exposure to public affairs. Oglethorpe's early adulthood was shaped by military service. He entered the British Army and saw action fighting the Ottoman Turks as a volunteer in the Austrian Army. The discipline and organizational skills he acquired as a soldier would later serve him well as a colonial founder. Returning to England, Oglethorpe leveraged his social connections and military reputation to secure a seat in Parliament for Haslemere in 1722, a constituency his family had long represented. B. The plight of English debtors and social reform. Oglethorpe's parliamentary career began conventionally, but an event in 1728 changed the trajectory of his life. One of his close friends, Robert Castell, died in the Fleet prison after contracting smallpox in squalid conditions. Castell's crime was debt, a common fate for many in early 18th century England, where debtors' prisons were notoriously cruel and corrupt. Appalled by his friend's death and by the broader suffering of debtors, Oglethorpe launched a campaign for prison reform. He chaired a parliamentary committee to investigate prison conditions, exposing abuses and advocating for humane treatment. The committee's 1729-1730 report caused a public outcry and led to some modest reforms, but for Oglethorpe it was clear that deeper social solutions were needed. He became convinced that many of England's worthy poor and debtors were victims of circumstance, deserving not punishment, but opportunity. C. Motivations for the Georgia colony. Oglethorpe's humanitarian instincts, combined with strategic and economic considerations, led to the idea of founding a new colony in America. He envisioned a place where honest but unfortunate people could start anew, free from the cycle of poverty and imprisonment. At the same time, the British government was eager to strengthen its southern frontier in North America against Spanish Florida and French Louisiana. Thus, the Georgia Project combined philanthropy, imperial ambition, and social engineering. Oglethorpe and his associates sought to create a haven for the poor, a buffer against foreign threats, and an orderly, virtuous society that would avoid the pitfalls of other colonies. The two, leadership, relationships, and vision for Georgia. A. The role of the trustees. In 1732, Oglethorpe and a group of like-minded philanthropists petitioned King George II for a royal charter to establish the colony of Georgia. The king granted the charter, and the trustees for the establishment of the colony of Georgia in America were formed. This body, consisting of Oglethorpe and 20 others, was unique among colonial governing authorities in that it operated as a board of unpaid gentlemen tasked with overseeing the social, economic, and legal foundations of the new settlement. B. Oglethorpe's leadership style. Oglethorpe quickly emerged as the de facto leader of the venture, combining vision with practical energy. Unlike many colonial founders, he was not content to direct affairs from afar. Instead, he personally led the first group of settlers, the first 40, across the Atlantic and remained in Georgia for nearly a decade. His hands-on approach, military discipline, and moral seriousness impressed many, but could also be divisive. Oglethorpe's leadership was marked by pragmatism and adaptability. He responded to crises, negotiated with Native Americans, and adapted rules to changing circumstances. Moral authority. He embodied the trustees' values of sobriety, hard work, and fairness, and sought to inspire these in the colonists. Personal sacrifice. He refused a salary and shared the hardships of the settlers, earning respect even from critics. C. Relationships with key groups. The settlers. Oglethorpe's relationship with the settlers was complex. On the one hand, he was seen as a benefactor, providing land, tools, and guidance. On the other hand, his strict enforcement of the trustees' rules, such as bans on rum and slavery and limits on landholding, sometimes provoked resentment. Many settlers, particularly those with prior colonial experience, chafed under these restrictions and lobbied for change. The trustees. As the public face of the trustees, Oglethorpe had to balance their ideals with the realities on the ground. The trustees' vision of a classless, sober, and industrious society was admirable but difficult to sustain. Oglethorpe often found himself mediating between the trustees' directives from London and the demands of the colonists. Native American allies. One of Oglethorpe's great achievements was his relationship with the Creek and Yamacraw Indians. He forged alliances based on respect, negotiation, and fair dealing, learning their languages and customs. The most famous of these was his friendship with Tomochichi, chief of the Yamacraws, who helped secure peaceful relations and land for the new colony. Oglethorpe's diplomacy helped Georgia avoid the devastating conflicts that plagued other colonies. Germans and Jews. C. Achievements and limitations. The trustees' achievements included the peaceful settlement of Savannah, innovative town planning, alliances with Native Americans, and the provision of a safety valve for England's poor. Their ban on slavery, though ultimately reversed, delayed the entrenchment of the plantation system and allowed for a different social experiment. However, the trustees' central control, rigid rules, and idealistic policies often clashed with reality. Settlers resented the lack of self-government and the economic restrictions. The trustees' inability to adapt quickly led to unrest and emigration. In 1752, the trustees surrendered their charter, and Georgia became a royal colony. The experiment in philanthropic governance was over, but its legacy endured in the colony's diversity, resilience, and civic traditions. V. Legacy and historical significance, Spanish and other colonial powers. As a military leader, Oglethorpe oversaw the defense of the colony against Spanish incursions from Florida, organizing the construction of forts and leading expeditions. His military background was invaluable in these efforts, although not all campaigns were successful. His blend of martial and diplomatic skills helped maintain Georgia's precarious position. Third, the vision for Georgia. Ideals and realities. A. Social and economic principles. The trustees' charter for Georgia reflected a strong philanthropic vision, heavily influenced by Oglethorpe's ideals. The key principles included land equality. Each settler received a small, equal plot of land, intended to prevent the rise of a landed aristocracy and promote a society of independent yeoman farmers. No slavery. The trustees banned slavery in Georgia, aiming to encourage hard work, social equality, and avoid the economic and moral pitfalls seen in nearby South Carolina. No rum. Alcohol was prohibited to promote sobriety and industriousness. No lawyers. Legal disputes were to be settled by local magistrates, reflecting a distrust of the litigiousness and complexity of English law. The trustees also encouraged religious freedom, with the exception of Catholics, welcoming persecuted groups such as Moravians, Lutherans from Salzburg, and Jews. B. The worthy poor and social engineering. Oglethorpe's vision for Georgia was fundamentally a social experiment. The worthy poor, those who had fallen into poverty through no fault of their own, were to be given a chance at redemption, not through charity alone, but through honest labor and community discipline. In this, Georgia was a radical departure from other colonies, which often replicated English social hierarchies and economic inequalities. Oglethorpe's hope was to create a virtuous, egalitarian society that would set an example for both England and America. See challenges and adjustments. Reality proved more difficult than theory. Georgia's climate and soil were less favorable than anticipated, and many settlers lacked the agricultural skills needed for success. The ban on slavery and restriction on landholding were increasingly unpopular, especially as neighboring South Carolina prospered with slave-based rice and indigo plantations. By the late 1740s, pressure from settlers led the trustees to relax many of the original restrictions. Slavery was legalized, land grants expanded, and economic growth accelerated, but the original philanthropic vision was diluted. Oglethorpe, disillusioned and exhausted by conflict and criticism, returned to England in 1743. He never returned to Georgia, though he continued to advocate for reform causes at home. 4. The trustees for the establishment of the colony of Georgia in America. Organization and governance. The trustees were a diverse group of English philanthropists, clergymen, politicians, and merchants. Appointed in 1732 for a period of 21 years, they operated as a non-profit trust, with no personal gain allowed. Their governance structure was unique. They held complete legal authority over Georgia, passing laws, appointing officials, and managing finances from London. Annual reports, correspondence, and the rules and orders of the trustees reveal their meticulous planning and idealism. They imposed detailed rules on land tenure, inheritance, trade, and social conduct. Funding and recruitment. The trustees raised funds through subscriptions and parliamentary grants. They recruited settlers from all over England and Europe, focusing on those who were industrious but poor, as well as religious refugees. The trustees' promotional literature presented Georgia as a land of opportunity and virtue, combining appeals to philanthropy, patriotism, and faith. Their efforts attracted a diverse population, including English, Scots, Oglethorpe's later life and reputation. After leaving Georgia, Oglethorpe continued to serve in Parliament and advocate for reform causes, including opposition to slavery and support for religious tolerance. He lived to a great age, dying in 1785, and was celebrated in both England and America as a humanitarian and patriot. The vision realized and compromised. Oglethorpe's vision for Georgia was both realized and compromised. The colony's foundations in equality, charity, and religious freedom set it apart, but the pressures of economy and demography transformed it into a more typical Southern colony. The initial ban on slavery, though reversed, contributed to later debates over slavery and reform in America. Enduring lessons. The story of Oglethorpe and the trustees offers enduring lessons about social reform, leadership, and the limits of utopian planning. Oglethorpe's blend of idealism and pragmatism, his commitment to the poor and oppressed, and his willingness to innovate remain inspiring, even as his failures remind us of the complexity of social change. Conclusion. James Oglethorpe's life was a testament to the power of vision and commitment in shaping history. As the founder of Georgia, he sought to create a society that would embody both charity and discipline, opportunity and order. His leadership, relationships, and ideals left an indelible mark on the colony and on American history more broadly. The trustees' experiment in philanthropic colonialism, though ultimately overtaken by economic and political realities, stands as a remarkable chapter in the history of social reform. Oglethorpe's legacy endures in the values of equality, tolerance, and compassion that he championed, and in the ongoing quest to balance idealism with practical governance.